Have you ever picked up an acorn, turned it in your hand, and wondered, wait, is this actually a kind of corn? The name certainly makes it sound that way. It's small, it's round, and it even has corn right there in the word. But if that's the case, why doesn't it grow like corn? And where did the name really come from? Today, we will uncover how a tiny seed ended up with such a confusing name and why it has nothing to do with corn at all, right here on History of Simple Things. At first glance, the word acorn does feel misleading. When we hear corn today, we usually think of the bright yellow kernels you see on a cob, a staple food in many parts of the world. So naturally, it's easy to assume that an acorn must be related somehow. But the truth is, the corn in acorn doesn't mean what you think it means, at least not anymore. To understand this, we have to go back in time, way back to Old English. The word acorn originally came from Acorn, which was used to describe the fruit of oak trees. But here's where it gets interesting. In older forms of English, the word corn didn't refer to a specific plant like maize. Instead, it was a general term that meant grain or seed. It could refer to wheat, barley, oats, basically any small, hard, edible kernel. So when people long ago said something like oak corn, they weren't comparing it to modern corn at all. They were simply describing it as the seed of the oak tree. Over time, language evolved, pronunciation shifted, and acorn gradually transformed into the word we know today, acorn. This kind of linguistic shift isn't unusual. In fact, it happens all the time. Words slowly change meaning as cultures, technologies, and diets evolve. A great example is how corn in British English once meant any grain, while in American English it eventually became specifically associated with maize, the plant we recognize today. So what feels like a confusing name is really just a snapshot of how language has changed over centuries. But there's another layer to this story, one that makes the name even more fascinating. Some linguists believe that the word acorn may also be connected to older roots related to the idea of field or produce of the land. That means the word wasn't just about the seed itself, but about its role as something that grows naturally and provides nourishment. And nourishment is exactly what acorns have done for thousands of years. Long before modern agriculture, acorns were an important food source for many cultures around the world. In parts of Europe, Asia, and North America, people gathered acorns, processed them to remove their natural bitterness, and turn them into flour or porridge. It wasn't always easy. They contained tannins that need to be leached out. But once prepared, acorns could be a reliable and nutritious staple. In that sense, calling them a kind of corn or grain actually makes a lot more sense. To early humans, acorns weren't just random tree seeds, they were food, survival, and sustenance. The name reflects how people understood and used them, not how we categorize plants today. Of course, acorns aren't just important to humans. They play a crucial role in nature as well. They are the seeds of oak trees, which means every towering oak forest you see likely started with something as small as an acorn. Animals like squirrels, deer, and birds rely on them as a major food source, especially during colder months. In fact, squirrels are famous for burying acorns and forgetting about some of them, which unintentionally helps plant new oak trees. It's a quiet, natural cycle. The acorn falls, animals gather it, some get eaten, and others grow into new life. And all of that is tied to a word that at first glance seems oddly misleading. There's also a poetic side to acorns that has kept them culturally significant over time. In many traditions, the acorn symbolizes potential, growth, and hidden strength. After all, it's hard to imagine that something so small can become a massive oak tree that lives for hundreds of years. That contrast, tiny seed to towering giant, has made the acorn a powerful symbol in art, literature, and even everyday sayings. You've probably heard phrases like, "Great oaks from little acorns grow." It's a reminder that big things often start small and that even something seemingly insignificant can hold incredible potential. And when you think about it, the name Acorn itself reflects that history, rooted in a time when people saw seeds not just as plants, but as essential building blocks of life. Interestingly, even though the word has stayed the same, our understanding of it has shifted. Today, most people don't associate acorns with grain or food in the same way early societies did. Instead, we see them more as symbols of autumn, scattered across sidewalks and parks, or as snacks for wildlife. The original meaning of corn has faded, leaving behind a word that feels slightly out of place, but still carries centuries of history within it. And that's what makes this such a great example of how language preserves the past. Words don't always update themselves to match modern meanings. Sometimes they hold on to older definitions like time capsules, quietly reminding us of how people once saw the world. So, no, an acorn isn't a type of corn, at least not in the way we understand corn today. But in a much older sense, it absolutely is. It's a seed, a grain, a source of life. The name isn't wrong, it's just from a different time. The next time you see an acorn on the ground, you might look at it a little differently, not just as a random object from a tree, but as something with a deep history, both in nature and in language. A tiny seed that carries centuries of meaning hidden in a single word. And maybe that's the real story here. Not just why it's called an acorn, but how something so small can connect us to the past in ways we don't even notice. Because sometimes the simplest things, like a name, have the most interesting stories behind them. Thank you for watching. If you have suggestions for our next video, feel free to share them in the comments below. We'll be sure to give you an acknowledgement for your contribution. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of simple things. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories woven through the smallest details.